In this grade 12 economics video, we are looking at our May-June question paper 1 for 2024. It's looking at the business cycle, international trade, and in the international trade, we are finally getting into the question of balance of payment. The question is in the description box below. We have already done a part of this question. This was question 2 of this question in the previous video that looked at the circular flow, taxes, as well as the multiplier. This one is looking into question 3 of that same question paper, so make sure that you go into the description box below and you download the question paper for yourself so that you can move along with me. So when you open your question paper, what can you expect to find? In our question paper, you know that we have section A and then we also have section B, so we are actually focusing in section B, particularly in question 3 of section B. And like I said, question 2 of section B is in the previous video. If you haven't watched that, make sure to go back and watch that video as well. So our question 3, you are seeing that in 3.1 they give you 2 questions that are not based on case study or on a cartoon, and it's one on monetary policy and the other one is on the fluctuation of the rand. So monetary policy is business cycle, whereas fluctuation of the rand is more of international trade. And then in 3.2 we are looking at a case study. Our case study is about a cartoon. It's a cartoon that represents our business study. You see that we have Eskom load shedding and the economy is being crushed by the load shedding. So basically that speaks of the the business cycle rather. So it's a representation of speaking of the business cycle without using the graph as we know it, but rather you interpreting it from a cartoon that you were given. So you will see that the questions that follow, they've asked you about the business cycle. The first one wants to know which business cycle period is represented in the cartoon, and you also have questions like discuss the 10th business cycle as well as the indicators of forecasting in the business cycle. In 3.3 we have a table. The table is about the trade account of the balance of payment account. So we have moved now into international trade, and in our international trade basically we are going to focus more on our balance of payments. So the questions that follow, you will see them that they're going to be on the international trade as well as balance of payment, describing what the balance of payment is and the commodities that are being traded, as well as dealing with imports and the disequilibrium in the balance of payment. Then in 3.4 we are discussing the exports prices, whereas in 3.5 we are discussing the provision of electricity in South Africa. So let's go back to the first question that focuses more on the business cycle, and then we will move on with those questions as they come along. So the question on business cycle, we start over with our 3.1. It's in macroeconomics because we know that business cycle is a macroeconomics topic. It says answer the following questions. In 3.1.1 they want you to name any 2 monetary policy instruments. So when we were discussing business cycle, by the way, we already have a video that specifically focuses on the business cycle, and in that video we discussed monetary policies. So in those monetary policies, basically we are looking at only 2 monetary policies that can be used in order to smooth out or to control the business cycle, if you want to put it that way. And what they do is they use interest rates or repurchase rates, also known as repo rates, as well as credit extensions. So these are the tools that banks use. So for the monetary policy, we are looking at what the private banks can do to control the fluctuations of the business cycle. So they use what banks work with. They work with interest rates as well as credit extensions, meaning how long your credit terms are. Then in the next question in 3.1.2 it says, why does the value of the rand fluctuate continuously against foreign currencies? So this is it's introducing us into international trade, but it can also affect your business cycle because it talks about the economy of the country. So it says that South Africa has a free floating exchange rate policy This means that the currency changes with the forces of demand and supply in the market. So we know that when you're doing economics, the main thing is your demand and supply, and the more you demand, the more the value of a thing comes, or the more scarce the supply is, then the higher the demand, the higher the value of a thing is. So our currency will fluctuate based on how much is demanded and how much of it do we have to supply. Then we go now to that question that specifically focuses on the business cycle, but they are using a cartoon to do so. And it says, study the cartoon below and answer the questions that follow. We see that there is ESCOM. ESCOM is pushing load shedding, and that load shedding is crashing our economy. That's how we are interpreting that cartoon. And so now you are seeing that if it's crashing the economy, then you know which part of the period of the business cycle you are in, which is relevant for 3.2.1, that says identify the business cycle period that is illustrated in the cartoon above. So our economy is going to go down because of the effects of the load shedding, and that puts us in a recession period. So your answer there will be a recession or a downswing or a contraction, between depending on which one would you remember better. So if you had said the recession or a downswing or even a contraction, you would have still been correct, because it shows a decline in our economy. It's coming to crush our economy because of the load shedding. Basically, the effect that the load shedding has on our economy, we know that load shedding lowers production. When it lowers production for businesses, it means that they cannot put out more output in terms of goods and services that they are used to. And if they're reducing that, it means they're making less income. It means that they are going to pay less taxes and hire less people, which means higher rates of unemployment. In 3.2.2, it says, which school of thought proposes internal forces as a reason for business cycle? Now, in the previous video that we did on business cycles, we never got into endogenous and exogenous school of thoughts. By school of thoughts, we are basically saying the forces that are basically influencing our business cycle. So if they're internal, we call them endogenous forces. Endogenous forces are within our economy or the economy itself. So the value of demand and supply, and the value of the rent, and how people are spending, the way they spend. Whereas exogenous forces are things that are outside the economy, but they still affect the economy, like the environment. The environment is it's a standalone thing, but when the environment is bad, for example, there's no rainfall, farmers suffer, which means what they produce is gonna be affected. So those ones will be endogenous. Then the next question says, in 3.2.3, briefly describe the term business cycle. If you have done that video on the business cycle, you should be familiar with this term. We talked about the description of this term in that video, as well as we did questions that asked us to determine or to describe the business cycle. So it's basically the successive periods of growth and decline in an economic activities. The key words here are successive periods, and we want to see the economic activities. So whatever there are a successive period of some sort of movement in the economic activities. So that is what your keywords are. So it's simply put, successive periods of growth and decline in the economic activities. You know that when you're looking at the business cycle diagram, it goes up and down, the straw end, and as well as the peak. So that is the up and down, or the growth and decline that we are talking about. In 3.2.4, it says, why can a lagging economic indicator not be used for forecasting? So forecasting, we are saying to project or to predict the future, and we are talking about a type of a lagging economic indicator. If you know your economic indicators, which we also did in that video, if you know what a lagging indicator is, you know that it's a type of indicator that you see its effect after the cycle has already happened. So we say lagging indicators cannot be used for predictions because they occur after the movement has already happened. So basically the question was asking you, why can we not use lagging indicators to predict the future? We can't, because lagging indicators only show up after the effect of the cycle has already happened. So what we need is leading indicators instead of lagging indicators there. Then in 3.2.5, it says, how can technological advancement affect the business cycle? So for the business cycle, we know that in business, or in the economy rather, what makes economic growth is if businesses are able to produce more, meaning put more output into the economy, produce goods and services faster. So the moment you can increase production, that will help the business cycle advance. So it says business can produce more, which will result in expansion of the business cycle. The increase in production of goods and services will lead to economic growth and an upswing in the business cycle, because it means that we can put out our outputs faster. So if it took us, for example, if it took a factory a month to produce a product, with technological advancement, they can produce it quicker. They can be now spending weeks, and if they are only spending 2 weeks to produce a product that they used to spend a whole month to produce, it means now they can sell it quicker, which means they can make an income quicker, which means they can pay their taxes quicker, they can pay their also in their employees quicker as well. Then we move on to a question now, or the next part of our question. It focuses more on the balance of payment. It's the 3.3, and it has the case study, and it says study the information table below and answer the questions that follow. It says trade account of the balance of payment by product. So you say that it's in millions of rands and it's in current prices. We're looking at large contribution product and merchandise exports. They're showing us our merchandise there. It's chromium ores, coal, ferroalloys, iron, manganese, and so forth. And in 3.3.1, it says identify South Africa's main export commodity for the from the information above. So we want the one that is bringing us more income, because remember, these are the commodities or the merchandises that we are exporting. When you export goods, it means that you are selling them to other countries to bring you money into your own country. So we are going to go back to that table and see which of these is giving me more money. You see that both in 2022 and in 2021, our platinum group metals gave us the most amount of money in both of those years. So our answer becomes platinum group metals. So our platinum group metals becomes the commodity that's making us the most amount of money, because that's the most amount of income that we have made when we are looking at all of our merchandises that we are exporting. And 3.3.2, it says what are the current prices also known as in economics. This one doesn't even have to go back to the table. It's your general knowledge. If you have studied your balance of payments before, we know that current prices are also known as nominal prices. We will see that in that table they said that those amounts are in current prices. They are in millions of rands in current prices. Current prices is also known as nominal prices. So if you didn't know this, now you know this. Keep it somewhere, that current prices is the same thing as nominal prices. If you're having the question paper, go back to that section where it says current prices, right next to it, or in bracket nominal prices, because they mean one and the same thing, so that it shows that you are going to remember next time that when you see current prices, is the same thing as seeing nominal prices. And then in 3.3.3, it says briefly describe the term balance of payment. If you are not familiar with what balance of payment is, a concept we deal with in international trade. So international trade, we're talking about foreign exchange market, meaning that there is goods and services that are moving from country to country, meaning exports and imports. So there is an account that each country keeps of its transactions with other countries. So when you define balance of payment, you will say it's a systemic record of all transactions between one country and another countries. So basically, how we keep record of, let's say it's a trade between South Africa and Zimbabwe, how we keep trade of how we transact between us and Zimbabwe, what we export to them and what they import into our country. That systemic record and how much we owe them, if there's deficits or debt, all of those things, we call them balance of payment, or we record them in a balance of payment. In 3.3.4, it says, how will a depreciation of rand impact the volume of imports from other countries? So when we are talking about the depreciation of rand, we are talking about the decrease in the value of the rand. So if the rand value decreases, it means that it's going to cost us more to import goods. Remember, importing is me buying from other countries. So to buy from other countries, especially countries that have a higher value in their currencies, is going to cost us more. So it says when the rand depreciates, it becomes weaker in comparison with other currencies, which will make importing more expensive, thus reducing the volume of imports. Because if it's more expensive, it means that we cannot buy as much as we used to buy. So that means that the volume of imports into the country is going to significantly reduce. Then in 3.3.5, it says, why are interest rates an important tool to correct disequilibrium in the balance of payment? So disequilibrium in the balance of payment basically means that when we find ourselves in a situation where, remember our example of trading with Zimbabwe, that we are importing more than we are exporting, meaning that what we are paying to them is more than what we are receiving as an income. So that causes us a disequilibrium. So how can we correct that? Using interest rates. So the banks use interest rates to correct disequilibrium by increasing interest rates. High interest rates will make borrowing more expensive, which will discourage the importing of goods. So basically, remember who's importing in a country. The people that are importing is the people of the country as well as the businesses in the country. To do that, most businesses and most consumers will go and borrow money from the banks. But if the interest rates are high, it means that we are going to borrow less, which means we cannot afford to export more. That means that we will be forced to buy locally. Then in 3.4, it says, briefly discuss the effect that higher export prices will have on the current account of the balance of payment. So it's basically what we were just explaining. Now we are talking about, instead of increasing interest rates, we have increased the export prices, meaning to buy from us has now become more expensive. How will that affect our balance of payment? So we said in the first bullet point, when export prices rise, the revenue earned from exports increase. This can result in larger account supply. Higher exports prices will boost the inflow of foreign currency into the economy, improving the balance of payment. In longer term, if export prices increase significantly, it may lead to a decline in volume or quantity of exports because the importing of countries will look for cheaper imports elsewhere in the world. So I wanted to read it to get to up to point 4 because I wanted to get you to a point of how does it end up being. It starts off being a good thing because it means that to buy from South Africa, countries will have to use more money to buy from us. At the beginning, that's going to be a good thing if they haven't find other suppliers for what they're looking for. Let's say the commodity that we are talking about is platinum, as we saw in that table. So that platinum, so far Zimbabwe only knows to get platinum in South Africa, and all of a sudden South Africa increases the prices. That forces Zimbabwe to buy that platinum at a higher price for a period. For that period, while they're still doing that, that's going to increase our balance of payment because it will mean that we have more income than we do exports. So whatever we are buying from them, maybe we don't buy it at as much of an expensive price, but the platinum that they are getting from us is coming to them at a higher amount. So that is going to be a good thing. But after a while, Zimbabwe is going to figure out we can also get platinum from Botswana. That's going to force them to now go to Botswana to get their platinum, which then means now there's going to be a decline in our balance of payment. So it will start good, but then it will go down. That's why I was saying that it's similar to the effect of the business cycle in a way. Then in 3.5, it says, how will poor electricity provision affect education in South Africa? So this one is taking us back to that cartoon of a business cycle that we saw earlier about load shedding and what effect that will have on the on the education of South Africa. So in point 1 we said poor electricity provision greatly reduces teaching resources and classroom materials. Without electricity, students have limited resources to complete their assignments. So things like computer labs in schools are going to be hard for them to use. Things like smart boards in schools are going to be hard for them to use. So it basically reduces the teaching resources that we are using. And then in bullet 2 we said this also results in a lack of current information. Teachers are not able to make copies of school assignments and connect to the internet to search activities or materials that are available. So the other thing is, we know that in schools we use copies and printers a lot. So in that scenario, we are saying that now the copy machine is not working anymore. So that means it's limiting really our resources, especially in schools where you know that test books are limited. So to get a question out of a test book, it becomes easier for a teacher to take that test book to the printer and or copy some of the pages for other learners for them to be able to have. When it comes to subjects like economics and business studies, you know that you deal with a lot of notes. If your teacher can't print out notes for you because of lack of electricity, that's going to affect the quality of the education in South Africa. In bullet 3 it says they also can't access online resources such as videos and other multimedia resources. As a result, teachers are unable to provide their students with quality of education they deserve. Today's education is more integrated with multimedia. For example, you watching this, getting this lesson from a YouTube channel means that you are dealing with multimedia, and the lack of electricity in the country will make using multimedia even more stressful, because now your tablet is not charged, your laptop is not charged. If you're using a computer, it's probably off if there is load shedding. And then lastly, students have little time to study and complete their homeworks. Why? Because you are running for the lighting outside. If the lighting outside is off and there's electricity from 6 to 8, it means from those hours you cannot be doing your homework. You will notice that 3.4 and 3.5 were those questions that were out of 8 marks. So it's important that you make sure that you give 4 bullet points in each, and that's why I gave 4 bullet points in each, because for 2 marks each you will be able to get your full 8 marks. So basically you can just continue explaining your concept further and further, and even give examples just for you to be able to reach those 4 bullet points. Each point should be a standalone point for you to be able to get your full 2 marks per point. That will make it and round it up to a total of 8 marks. And just like that, that would complete our question on business cycle and balance of payment. Remember, we already did question 2, and next we are going to be doing question 4, so stay tuned for that one. Otherwise, if you have any other questions concerning this question paper, make sure that you leave them for me in the comment section below, and remember, the question paper is linked in the description. Now, if you need one-on-one help with anything that we have covered in this video or this subject in general, we have a visual program that can help you with just that. From anywhere in the country, all you need is an email and a WhatsApp, and we are able to give you personalized help for a monthly fee. This will cover full lesson recordings as well as notes and study materials for any of your subjects that you need personal help with. This will include some of the subjects that are not even covered on this channel. For example, subjects like history. You will soon see our full subject list. We will also cover scopes for those specific subjects as well as attempt past papers together. But what's most important about these virtual sessions is that you get full-time communication, meaning from the hours of 8 o'clock to 4 p.m. you are able to send in your questions. Even if you send them at late, between the hours of 8 and 4 you will get replies to your questions. You will get to go back and forth and get full-time attention on any question that you do have. Even if we have to repeat something over and over again, you get to have that personalized help that is helpful to you. As you can see with some of the examples there, we get to exchange scripts, we get to exchange question papers, and you get to show me what it is that you wrote, and you even get markings for your questions to see how you actually do perform when it comes to a specific question or a specific subject. Grade 10 to grade 12, as well as those who are upgrading and rewriting, those are the full list of subjects that we do offer. If you are interested in any of this, for you to be able to get your price quotation, it is very simple. All you have to do is email me on that email address that you see there. When you do email, make sure that in the subject line you write your name and surname, and then in the body of your email, that's where you will tell me your grade and the subjects that you need help with. It can be one subject or it can be a mixture of subject. Hence, we are saying that you need to email for you to be able to get your price quotation. Now, because this is one-on-one, it means that it puts a limit on the number of people I can take per month. So I'm going to be limiting it to 10 students per month. So make sure that you email to secure your spot. Have YouTube recommend you more of my videos, be sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below.